He slapped the shy waitress. So hard the room froze, then she whispered a name that made the Mafia boss step back like he'd seen a ghost. His men bowed, the whole restaurant filmed, and every secret she'd buried for 6 years detonated in seconds. Now he's trapped between her bloodline and his pride, and the question burning under those chandeliers: what does a man do when the woman he struck outranks his entire empire? If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. The chandeliers of La Castilla glimmered like constellations trapped in gold. Beneath them, wealthy patrons whispered over wine older than the building itself. Men in dark suits watched everything with silent efficiency. This was no ordinary restaurant. This was Durante Pisani territory, and when a Pisani walked in, everyone pretended not to be afraid. Everyone except one person, a shy waitress with quiet eyes and a name no one questioned. Rosa Edward. She moved like someone trying not to exist. Head down, voice soft, gentle steps between tables that never drew attention, never caused disruption. She was a ghost in an apron, serving risotto to people who never looked her in the eye. If anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed the elegance in how she carried herself. The way her spine remained perfectly straight even when she bent to pour wine. The way her hands moved with a dancer's precision, never trembling, never hesitating. The way she navigated the crowded dining room without ever bumping into anyone, as if she'd been trained to command space rather than simply occupy it. But no one looked closely. Not until tonight. Durante Pisani sat beneath the center chandelier like a king under a crown. Black suit tailored to perfection. Hair slicked back with not a strand out of place. Tattoos like shadows rising from beneath his collar. Intricate designs that suggested violence and artistry in equal measure. His presence bent the room around him. Servers became shadows. Conversations dimmed to murmurs. Even the clinking of silverware seemed quieter near his table. 6 men flanked him, all dressed in matching black suits with crisp white shirts. They weren't bodyguards, they were too refined for that. These were associates, the kind who could kill you with a smile and make it look like an accident. They sat with perfect posture, eyes constantly scanning, hands resting on the table in positions that suggested they could reach for weapons faster than most people could blink. Rosa approached his table with the calmness of a candle in a storm. "Good evening, gentlemen. May I offer you something to drink while you review the menu?" Her voice was soft but clear. Professional. The kind of voice that suggested she'd done this 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more without complaint. Durante glanced at her slow, assessing, mildly amused. His dark eyes tracked her face, then her hands, then back to her face, like he was reading her, cataloging her, deciding if she was worth remembering. "Barolo," he said. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to command attention. "The 97. 2 bottles. Of course, sir." Rosa turned with practiced grace and disappeared toward the wine cellar. The evening continued smoothly. Durante's table received their wine, their appetizers, their entrees. The kitchen sent out their best work handmade pasta, perfectly seared veal, risotto that looked like edible gold. Durante ate slowly, occasionally nodding to his associates, occasionally glancing around the room with the casual interest of a man who owned everything he surveyed. Rosa served them without incident, refilled glasses before they were empty, cleared plates without interrupting conversation. She was invisible again, exactly as she preferred. But then Durante reached inside his suit jacket. His hand came out empty. His expression darkened like a storm cloud crossing the sun. Rosa was setting down fresh water glasses when he stood abruptly. His chair scraped against marble. The sound cut through the dining room like a gunshot. Every head turned. "You." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Sharp, cold, dangerous. Rosa's heart kicked against her ribs, but her face remained calm. She set down the water pitcher with steady hands and turned to face him. "Yes, sir. Is something wrong?" "My money clip is missing." The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. Ripples of shock spread outward. Nearby diners exchanged glances. A woman covered her mouth with her napkin. Servers near the kitchen doors froze mid-step. Durante took a step closer to Rosa, then another, until he was standing directly in front of her. So close she could smell his cologne expensive, woody, with notes of leather and smoke. "And you," he said quietly, each word precise as a blade, were the only one close enough to take it. Gasps rippled through the room. A businessman 3 tables away actually pushed back his chair, ready to flee if necessary. Rosa shook her head quickly, heart pounding now, but her voice remained steady. "Sir, I didn't. Don't lie to me." He stepped even closer. Closer than any patron should ever stand to staff. His breath warmed her cheek. His eyes, those dark, predatory eyes, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her feel like prey pinned beneath a hawk's talons. His gloved hand closed around her jaw. Not gently, not violently. Somewhere in between a grip that suggested he could break her if he chose, but was holding back. For now, in the chandelier light, his tattoos looked like inked shadows crawling up his neck. Beautiful and brutal. "You think I don't know a thief when I see one?" he hissed, voice low enough that only she could hear. "You think I don't recognize desperation?" Rosa's pulse thundered in her ears. Her hands trembled at her sides. But something deeper than fear began rising in her chest. Something older. Something she'd spent 6 years trying to bury. "Sir, I swear." He cut her off with an open palm slap. The crack echoed through La Castiglia like thunder in a cathedral. Rosa's head snapped sideways. Pain exploded across her cheek, white-hot, stunning. For a moment, she couldn't hear anything except the ringing in her ears. Couldn't see anything except stars dancing across her vision. The room erupted in gasps. A woman at a nearby table covered her face with both hands. A businessman grabbed his wife's arm, pulling her back as if violence might spread like wildfire. Somewhere near the kitchen, a server dropped a tray. The crash of shattering plates punctuated the moment like an exclamation point. Rosa's lips split. She tasted copper warm, metallic, undeniable. Blood trickled down her chin, a single crimson drop falling onto her pristine white shirt. But she didn't fall. Her legs trembled. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to collapse, to disappear into the floor and never emerge. Instead, she straightened, slowly, deliberately, her spine lengthening vertebra by vertebra until she stood at her full height, her chin lifted. Her eyes, those soft brown eyes that had spent 6 years learning to look down, met Durante's directly, and something in them had changed. Not fear, not defeat, not the broken submission he was clearly expecting. Something deeper, older, colder. Durante felt the shift immediately. His hand, still raised from the slap, lowered slowly. His brow furrowed, confusion flashing across his face for just a fraction of a second before his mask of control slammed back into place. Around them, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Forks suspended in midair, wineglasses frozen halfway to lips. Even the kitchen seemed to have stopped, no clattering pans, no shouted orders. Just horrified, breathless silence. "Everyone's watching," Rosa said quietly. Her voice didn't shake, didn't waver. "Is that what you wanted? An audience?" Durante's jaw tightened. "I want my property back. I don't have it." "You're lying." "I'm not." Her eyes never left his. Blood still dripped from her lip, staining her collar, but she didn't wipe it away, didn't acknowledge it, as if pain was beneath her notice, as if his violence had failed to touch whatever lived beneath her skin. One of Durante's associates shifted uncomfortably. Another exchanged a quick glance with his companion, confusion evident even through their practiced neutrality. "Search her," Durante commanded, without breaking eye contact with Rosa. A server near the bar gasped. The manager, Antonio, stepped forward, hands raised. "Mr. Pisani, perhaps we should stay out of this." Durante's voice was a whip crack. Antonio froze, mouth still open, and slowly backed away. 2 of Durante's men approached Rosa. She didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there with that strange, terrible calmness as they patted down her apron pockets, checked her waistband, even knelt to examine her shoes. "Nothing." "She doesn't have it, boss," one of them reported, straightening. Durante's eyes narrowed. His hand shot out again, gripping Rosa's jaw harder this time, fingers digging into her skin. She could feel his rings pressing against her cheekbone, could see the fury building behind his eyes like a storm gathering strength. "Then where is it?" Rosa's hands remained at her sides. She didn't try to pull away from his grip, didn't struggle. That same eerie calm radiated from her like heat from a fire. "I don't know," she said, each word careful and deliberate. "But I know what you think you're doing. You think you're showing power. You think everyone in this room now knows you're dangerous." She paused. Blood from her lip had pooled in the corner of her mouth. "But all they see is a man who hits women over money." The words landed like physical blows. Several of Durante's associates tensed. One actually reached toward his jacket before stopping himself. Around the dining room, phones appeared, discreetly, hidden beneath napkins, angled under tables, recording, documenting, preparing to spread this moment across social media, like wildfire. Durante saw them too. His grip on Rosa's jaw tightened until she thought her bones might crack. "Careful," he whispered, voice dropping to something dark and intimate and deadly. "You don't know who you're talking to." Rosa's eyes, those eyes that had changed so completely in the last 3 minutes, met his without blinking. "And you," she said softly, "don't know who you're talking to." Something in her tone made his hand falter. Just slightly. Just enough. "What's your name?" he demanded suddenly. "Your real name?" Rosa hesitated. For the first time since the slap, fear flickered across her face. Real fear, the kind that came from standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing one more step would change everything forever. The room held its breath. Phones kept recording. Durante's fingers pressed harder against her jaw, tilting her face up toward the chandelier light. In that golden glow, with blood on her lips and fire in her eyes, she looked like something sacred and profane at once. "Answer me," he commanded. Rosa closed her eyes, drew one long, slow breath. When she opened them again, 6 years of hiding shattered like glass. "My real name?" she whispered. Durante leaned closer, waiting. Rosa's voice was barely audible, but in that silence, everyone heard. "Rosa. DeSantis." The name hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. DeSantis. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The room remained frozen, diners mid-breath, servers mid-step, phones still recording a moment they didn't yet understand. Then Durante's hand fell away from Rosa's face. Not slowly, not gently, like he'd touched fire and only just realized he was burning. He took a step back, his face, that carefully controlled mask of power, cracked. Just for a second. Shock flashed across his features before he could stop it, followed by something that looked almost like fear. Around the table, his associates reacted instantly. The man closest to Durante, a tall, older soldier with silver at his temples, lowered his head. Actually bowed, like a subject before royalty. The others followed suit, shoulders dropping, eyes averted, postures shifting from predatory to deferential in the space of a breath. They knew, even if the rest of the room didn't understand, they knew exactly what that name meant. Rosa stood perfectly still, blood still trickling from her split lip, her hand trembling now that she'd finally spoken the words she'd sworn never to say again. She could feel the weight of her real name settling back onto her shoulders like a cloak she'd tried to discard. Heavy, inescapable, absolute. "DeSantis?" Durante repeated slowly, testing the word. His voice had changed completely, no longer sharp and commanding, but careful, measured, like he was walking through a minefield and had just realized every step could be his last. Around the dining room, confusion rippled through the crowd. Tourists looked at each other, bewildered. A businessman pulled out his phone, typing the name into Google. But the locals, the real New Yorkers, the ones who understood the city's hidden architecture of power, their faces paled. An elderly man in an expensive suit actually stood up, threw cash on his table, and walked out without a word. His wife followed, casting one last frightened glance at Rosa before disappearing through the door. "You're lying," Durante said, but there was no conviction in it, just desperate hope that she was. Rosa laughed a short, bitter sound. "Why would I lie about that? Do you think I wanted you to know?" She wiped the blood from her chin with the back of her hand, smearing red across her skin. In the chandelier light, with her hair slightly disheveled from his grip and fire burning in her eyes, she looked nothing like the shy waitress who'd served his table an hour ago. She looked like exactly what she was. Durante's mind was racing. She could see it in his eyes. He was remembering. His father's warnings, whispered in dark rooms when Durante was young enough to still listen. The names you never cross. The families above the families. The bloodlines so old, so respected, that even monsters showed deference. "The DeSantis line goes back 4 centuries, his father had said once, voice grave. Before the 5 families, before Prohibition, before America even knew what organized crime was. They don't operate in the streets, Durante. They don't scramble for territory or fight over drug corners. They simply exist. And everyone respects that existence. You cross a DeSantis, you cross history itself." Durante had been 15. He'd nodded, filed the information away, assumed it was just old men romanticizing the past. Now, staring at the waitress he'd just slapped, he understood. His father hadn't been romanticizing anything. You can't be, he said, voice low, almost pleading. The DeSantis family. They don't work service jobs. They don't hide. They don't— I left, Rosa interrupted. Her voice was steadier now, stronger. 6 years ago, I wanted a normal life. I wanted to be Rosa Edward, nobody special, nobody dangerous, nobody worth remembering. I wanted to serve pasta and pour wine and go home to a quiet apartment and read books and be invisible. She stepped closer to him. Durante, the man who'd made grown men weep, who'd built an empire on fear, actually took a step back. But you couldn't let me have that, could you? Rosa continued, each word sharp as broken glass. You had to make a scene. Had to show everyone how powerful you are. Had to put your hands on me in front of witnesses because a piece of metal went missing from your pocket. I didn't know. Durante started. You didn't ask. Rosa's voice rose, finally cracking with emotion. Not fear. Fury. You didn't question. Didn't investigate. You just assumed that because I'm a waitress, because I'm a woman, because I looked weak to you, that I must be a thief. Around them, Durante's associates were sweating. The silver-haired one caught Durante's eye, shaking his head almost imperceptibly. Stop. Step back. Fix this before it's too late. Durante's jaw worked. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Rosa could see him warring with himself, pride versus survival, arrogance versus wisdom. The DeSantis family, he said finally, voice barely above a whisper. They have a saying. Touch one of ours, answer to all of ours. Rosa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I see you were paying attention to your father's lessons. Durante's face went white. Clear the room, he said suddenly, turning to his men. Everyone out, now. His associates moved immediately, gesturing to confused diners, ushering staff toward exits. Antonio tried to protest. Mr. Pisani, the bill, now. Within minutes, La Castiglia emptied like water from a broken glass. Wealthy patrons fled. Staff disappeared into the kitchen and out the back door. Phones kept recording until the last possible second, until only Rosa and Durante remained, standing under golden chandeliers in an empty restaurant that suddenly felt like a tomb. The silence was deafening. No clinking glasses, no murmured conversations, no kitchen sounds bleeding through the walls, just Rosa and Durante, standing 6 feet apart under chandeliers that suddenly seemed too bright, too accusatory. The empty tables around them felt like an audience of ghosts, bearing witness to something neither of them could take back. Durante loosened his tie. The small gesture, so human, so vulnerable, looked wrong on him, like watching a statue crack. Why? He asked finally. His voice was different now. No command in it. No threat. Just genuine, bewildered curiosity. Why would someone from the DeSantis bloodline serve wine to strangers? Rosa touched her split lip gingerly, wincing. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. Her uniform was ruined, blood on the collar, wrinkles from his grip, the fabric bearing witness to violence she'd spent 6 years trying to avoid. Because the DeSantis bloodline comes with expectations, she said quietly. Traditions, rules, a life that was chosen for me before I could even speak. Do you know what it's like to have your entire existence mapped out? Every friendship vetted, every relationship assessed for strategic value, every word you speak measured against 4 centuries of legacy. She laughed bitterly. I was 20 years old when they told me who I'd marry. A good alliance, they said, beneficial for both families. He was 43. I'd met him twice, but my opinion didn't matter because I wasn't Rosa, I was a DeSantis, a chess piece. Durante's expression shifted, something almost like understanding flickering across his face. So you ran, he said. I ran. Rosa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking smaller. Younger. Changed my name. Found this job. Learned to be nobody. And it worked, Durante. For 6 years, I was free. I was just me. Not a legacy. Not a symbol. Just a woman who poured wine and went home and lived her own life. She met his eyes. Until tonight. Durante turned away, running a hand through his perfectly slicked hair, disrupting it for the first time. When he turned back, some of his composure had returned, but it looked like armor hastily reassembled, still protective, but visibly cracked. I thought you were a thief, he said. Not an apology, not quite, but an explanation. I know what you thought. Rosa's voice hardened. You thought I was easy prey. You thought you could humiliate me in front of everyone and face no consequences. Because people like me, waitresses, service workers, women who can't fight back, we don't matter to people like you. That's not... Don't lie to me now. Rosa stepped closer. Her fear was gone, burned away by something fiercer. You saw someone you perceived as weak and you enjoyed putting them in their place. That's what men like you do. That's your power. Durante's jaw clenched. For a moment, Rosa thought he might argue, defend himself, make excuses. Instead, he said, "You're right." The admission hung between them like a confession. "I did think you were weak," he continued, voice rough. "I did think you wouldn't fight back. I was angry about the money clip, and I took it out on the nearest convenient target." He paused. "That doesn't excuse it, but it's the truth." Rosa studied him, this man who'd struck her, humiliated her, torn away her carefully constructed invisibility. His tattoos crawled up his neck like accusations. His expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume. In the empty restaurant, without his soldiers, without his audience, he looked almost human. Almost. "Your men knew," she said. "The moment I said my name, they knew. They bowed their heads like I was royalty. Because you are." Durante's voice was flat. "In our world, bloodlines matter. History matters. The DeSantis family." He trailed off, searching for words. "They're not like other families. They don't grab territory, don't push drugs, don't extort businesses. They simply exist, and that existence commands respect. My grandfather," Rosa said quietly, "used to say that real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Your grandfather is Vittorio DeSantis." Not a question. Durante knew. The silent king. Rosa nodded. "He'll have heard about this by now. Someone in that dining room will have called him. Probably several someones." Durante's face paled slightly. "And he'll come for me." "I don't know." Rosa touched her swollen cheek. "Traditionally, yes. An insult to a DeSantis woman demands a response. But I left the family. I rejected the name. I don't know if the old rules still apply to me." A sound made them both turn, a door opening. One of Durante's associates stepped in, the silver-haired one. He held something small and glittering between his fingers. "Boss," he said carefully, "we found it. Your money clip. It slipped through a tear in your coat lining. Probably happened when you sat down." He placed it on the nearest table. Diamond-encrusted, expensive, meaningless. Durante stared at it like it was a live grenade. The associate bowed slightly to Rosa, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable an hour ago, and left quickly. The silence returned, heavier now. Rosa looked at the money clip. At Durante. At her blood-stained uniform. At the elaborate waste of everything that had just happened. "I was innocent," she said softly. Durante closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had shifted. The arrogance was gone. The certainty. What remained looked uncomfortably like shame. "Yes," he said. "You were." Rosa turned toward the door. "Wait." Durante's voice stopped her. "Rosa, DeSantis, I owe you a conversation. A real one." She looked back at him, this man who'd struck her. This man who'd exposed her. This man who now stood in an empty restaurant looking less like a king and more like someone who'd just realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. "You owe me more than that," she said quietly. "But a conversation is a start." Durante Pisani had apologized exactly 3 times in his adult life. Once to his mother, on her deathbed. Once to his father's memory, standing over his grave. Once to a priest, in a confessional he'd never entered again. Never to a woman. Never to someone he'd wronged. Never to someone who could destroy him with a single phone call. He looked at Rosa, blood drying on her chin, her uniform ruined, her eyes sharp with something between fury and exhaustion, and felt words stick in his throat like broken glass. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted finally. Rosa crossed her arms. "Do what?" "Apologize to someone like you. Someone like me." Her voice was flat, dangerous. "You mean a DeSantis? Or a woman? Or just a person you misjudged?" "All 3. Durante took a step closer, then thought better of it and stopped. "In my world, apologies are weakness. They're blood in the water. You apologize, and people see opportunity. They see something to exploit. Then maybe your world is broken," Rosa said quietly. Durante's laugh was harsh. "Maybe it is. But it's the only one I know." He rubbed his jaw, looking uncomfortable in a way she suspected he rarely looked. "My father used to say that a man should only apologize when the cost of not apologizing is higher than his pride." "And is it?" Rosa challenged. "Is the cost high enough for you?" Durante met her eyes. Your grandfather could end me with a word, could dismantle everything I've built, could make me disappear so thoroughly that even my own mother wouldn't find my body. He paused. So yes, the cost is high enough. That's not an apology, Rosa said coldly. That's self-preservation dressed up as remorse. You're right. Durante dragged a hand through his hair again, frustrated. You're absolutely right. But I don't know how else to do this. I don't know how to... He stopped, jaw working. I slapped you, in front of witnesses. I humiliated you. I accused you of theft when you were innocent. And I did it all because I'm so used to power that I forgot there are people in this world I should fear. You shouldn't fear me, Rosa said. You should respect me. There's a difference. Teach me the difference. The words came out raw, almost desperate. Rosa blinked, surprised. Durante stepped closer, not threatening now, but almost pleading. I was raised in violence, taught that respect comes from fear, that power comes from making people afraid to cross you. My father built an empire on that principle. I inherited it. I perfected it. He gestured at the empty restaurant. This is my kingdom, and in my kingdom, I'm God. Except you're not, Rosa said softly. Because gods don't bleed. And right now, you're bleeding from a wound you can't even see. Durante's eyes narrowed. What wound? The one that makes you think violence is the same as strength. Rosa touched her split lip. You hit me because you were angry. Because you could. Because in your world, that's what powerful men do to people beneath them. But I'm not beneath you, Durante. I never was. And now you know it. She stepped closer to him, close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw, the rapid pulse at his throat, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides like he didn't know what to do with them. So here's your lesson in respect, she continued. An apology isn't about fear. It's not about calculating costs or protecting empires. It's about acknowledging that you hurt someone and wishing you hadn't. It's about being human enough to admit you were wrong. Durante stared at her. In the chandelier light, his tattoos looked less like symbols of power and more like scars. Evidence of violence survived, not inflicted. I'm sorry, he said finally. The words came out rough, unpracticed. For striking you, for humiliating you, for treating you like you were nothing when you were everything I should have recognized and honored. Rosa's breath caught. It wasn't a perfect apology. It was clumsy, weighted with his inability to fully shed his armor. But it was real. That's better, she said quietly. Let me drive you home, Durante said suddenly. It's late. You're hurt. And you want to know where I live? Rosa's voice turned sharp again. You want to keep track of me? Make sure I don't disappear again. Yes, Durante admitted. But also because sending you out into the city with a split lip and blood on your uniform feels wrong. Even to me. Rosa laughed, a real laugh this time, though tinged with bitterness. You're worried about how it looks. I'm worried about you. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. Rosa studied his face, searching for deception and finding only confusion like he'd just discovered something about himself he didn't understand. No, she said finally. I'll take a cab. Rosa, I spent 6 years being invisible, she interrupted. Building a life where I answered to no one. Where I made my own choices. Where I didn't have powerful men telling me what to do or where to go or how to be safe. Her voice trembled slightly. You took that from me tonight. You exposed me. You stripped away everything I built. So no, you don't get to drive me home. You don't get to know where I live. You don't get anything from me except the knowledge that you were wrong and I was right. She walked toward the door, then paused. And Durante? She looked back at him. The next time you think about putting your hands on someone you perceive as weak, remember this moment. Remember that you can't always see the power someone carries until it's too late. She left him standing alone in the empty restaurant, surrounded by gold and crystal and the lingering ghost of his mistake. Rosa's hands shook as she unlocked the door to her apartment. The small studio in Brooklyn looked exactly as she'd left it 6 hours ago. Minimalist furniture, books stacked on every surface, a single window overlooking a fire escape. Safe, quiet, hers. Except it didn't feel safe anymore. She locked the door, checked it twice, then collapsed against it, sliding down until she sat on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest. The tears came suddenly, violently. Not from pain, though. Her cheek throbbed and her lip burned. From loss. From the shattering of 6 years of carefully constructed freedom. From the weight of a name she'd tried so hard to escape settling back onto her shoulders like chains. Rosa de Santis. She'd spoken it out loud. In front of witnesses. In front of Durante Pisani and his men, and all those phones recording, uploading, spreading the news across the city like wildfire. By morning, everyone would know. By morning, her grandfather would come. Rosa pulled herself up, stumbled to the bathroom, and stared at her reflection. Her cheek was swollen, already purpling. Her lip was split, crusted with dried blood. Her eyes looked haunted or perhaps just exhausted from carrying secrets too heavy for one person. She cleaned the blood away gently, carefully, like she was washing away more than just evidence of violence, like she was trying to wash away the last 6 years and the person she'd tried to become. Rosa Edward, she thought sadly. I'm sorry, you deserved more time. Her phone buzzed. Once, twice, 10 times in rapid succession. She ignored it, knew without looking that the messages would be from old family contacts she'd blocked years ago. People who'd somehow gotten her new number. People who'd seen the videos already circulating. People who wanted to know if it was true. If the lost DeSantis daughter had finally been found. Rosa turned off her phone and crawled into bed fully clothed, pulling the blanket over her head like a child hiding from monsters. But the monsters were real. And they wore expensive suits and carried 4 centuries of expectations. Across the city, in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, Durante paced. His associates watched nervously as their boss stalked back and forth like a caged animal. Jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, tie hanging loose around his neck. Talk to me, Durante demanded. What are we dealing with? The silver-haired associate Franco cleared his throat. The DeSantis family, boss. He searched for words. They're old money, old power. They don't operate like we do. No street soldiers, no visible operations. But their influence runs deep. Politicians, judges, law enforcement, all the way to the top. I know that, Durante snapped. Tell me something I don't know. Another man spoke up, younger, tech-savvy. The videos are everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Millions of views already. The hashtag number DeSantis slap is trending. People are calling for your head. Durante stopped pacing. Let them call. Boss. With respect. Franco stepped forward. This isn't like our usual problems. This isn't rival families or territory disputes. The DeSantis don't fight the way we fight. They don't send soldiers. They don't make threats. They simply, he gestured helplessly. They remove problems, quietly, permanently. Then why am I still breathing? Durante challenged. Because they haven't decided what to do yet, Franco said grimly. But they will. Vittorio DeSantis doesn't let insults stand, especially not to his granddaughter. Durante felt something cold settle in his chest. Fear, yes. But something else too, something he couldn't quite name. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rosa's face, the moment after he slapped her. The way she'd stood instead of fallen. The fire in her eyes when she'd spoken her true name. I'm not beneath you, Durante. I never was. Get me everything on her, Durante ordered suddenly. Where she's been, what she's been doing, why she left her family. Boss, everything. His men exchanged worried glances but nodded and dispersed. Franco remained. Durante, can I speak freely? Durante waved a hand. You're playing with fire, the older man said quietly. The girl, the woman, she walked away from the DeSantis family for a reason. Whatever that reason is, it's powerful enough that she's been hiding for 6 years, and now you've dragged her back into the light. I didn't drag her anywhere, Durante protested. She chose to reveal herself. Because you forced her hand. Franco's voice was gentle but firm. You put her in a position where hiding her identity meant accepting humiliation. She chose dignity over safety. But that choice will have consequences. For her, and for you. Durante turned to the window, staring out at the glittering city. Somewhere out there, Rosa was probably crying, or planning, or calling her family to explain. Or maybe she was doing none of those things. Maybe she was being exactly what she'd been in that restaurant, stronger than anyone expected. What would you do? Durante asked quietly. If you were me? Franco was silent for a long moment. I'd pray, he said finally. Because when the DeSantis come, and they will come, prayer might be the only thing that saves you. In a mansion in Westchester, an old man sat in a leather chair, surrounded by darkness, except for a single lamp. Vittorio DeSantis was 83 years old. White hair, weathered face, eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. He held a phone, watching a video for the 3rd time. A restaurant, golden chandeliers. His granddaughter, his Rosa, standing with blood on her face and fire in her eyes, speaking her true name. Coming home. He set down the phone and pressed a button on his desk. A man appeared in the doorway instantly. Young, efficient, dangerous. "Find Durante Pisani," Vittorio said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But don't touch him. Not yet." "And the girl, sir?" Vittorio's expression softened, the only softness he'd shown in years. "Bring my granddaughter home." Rosa woke to silence. Not the comfortable silence of her small Brooklyn apartment, but the heavy, expectant silence that comes before a storm. Sunlight filtered through her window, too bright, too cheerful for the weight pressing against her chest. She'd slept poorly, fitful dreams of chandeliers and blood, and her grandfather's disappointed face. Now, lying in yesterday's stained uniform, every part of her ached. Her cheek throbbed, her lip had swollen during the night. But worse than the physical pain was the hollow feeling in her stomach, the knowledge that everything had changed. She forced herself up, showered carefully around her injuries, and changed into jeans and a sweater. Simple, civilian, not Rosa Edward the waitress, not Rosa DeSantis the heir, just someone in between, someone who didn't exist anymore. The knock came at 9:47 a.m. 3 sharp raps, polite but firm, the kind of knock that suggested the person on the other side would wait exactly 30 seconds before knocking again. Or breaking down the door. Rosa's heart hammered. She knew that knock, had grown up with that knock. Family. She opened the door to find 2 men in dark suits. One was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the patient posture of someone who'd spent decades waiting outside important doors. The other was younger, broader, with the alert eyes of a bodyguard. Behind them, barely visible at the top of the stairs, she glimpsed 2 more. "Miss DeSantis," the older man said. His voice was respectful but unyielding. "Your grandfather requests your presence." Requests. As if she had a choice. "I'm not ready," Rosa said. "He's waiting in the car." Rosa's breath caught. "He's here?" He came personally. The man's expression softened slightly. "He's been waiting since 6 this morning. Didn't want to wake you." Rosa closed her eyes. Of course he came. Of course he waited. Vittorio DeSantis didn't send messages or make phone calls for important matters. He appeared. And when he appeared, the world rearranged itself around him. "Give me 5 minutes." "Of course, miss." Rosa closed the door with trembling hands. 5 minutes to prepare for a conversation she'd been avoiding for 6 years. 5 minutes to find words that could explain why she'd abandoned her family, her legacy, her name. 5 minutes to become a DeSantis again. She pulled on a jacket, grabbed her keys, then stopped. Looked around her apartment, this small, precious space that had been her sanctuary. The books she'd collected, the thrift store furniture she'd assembled herself, the life she'd built from nothing. "Goodbye," she thought. "Thank you for keeping me safe." Then she walked out the door. The car was a black Mercedes, understated but unmistakably expensive. The kind that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. The rear window was tinted, but Rosa could see her grandfather's silhouette inside. The older man opened the door for her. Rosa slid in. Vittorio DeSantis sat with perfect posture, hands folded over a silver-topped cane. He looked exactly as she remembered, white hair immaculately combed, 3-piece suit perfectly tailored, face lined with age but sharp with intelligence. He could have been a banker, a professor, a diplomat. He was none of those things. "Rosa," he said softly. His voice was like aged whiskey, smooth, warm, dangerous if you drank too much. "Nonno." The word grandfather in Italian came out before she could stop it. 6 years away, and her first word to him was the same one she'd used as a child. His eyes moved to her face, to the bruise, the swollen lip. Something flickered in his expression. Not anger exactly, but something colder, more final. "Who did this?" he asked, though they both knew he already knew. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "I don't want revenge," Rosa said quickly. "I don't want—" "What do you want?" Vittorio interrupted gently. "You've been hiding for 6 years, living under a false name, working in restaurants when you should have been—" He stopped himself. "What do you want, Rosa?" The question hung between them like a test. "I wanted freedom," Rosa whispered. "I wanted to choose my own life, to not be a chess piece, to not wake up every morning carrying the weight of 4 centuries on my back." "And did you find it? Freedom?" Rosa thought about her apartment, her books, the quiet nights reading poetry, the simple pleasure of earning her own money, making her own choices. "Yes," she said, "until last night." Vittorio nodded slowly. "Durante Pisani. He didn't know who I was. That's not an excuse." I know, Rosa's voice cracked. But I don't want war, Nono. I don't want bloodshed. I don't want the families at each other's throats because of me. You think you have a choice in this? Vittorio's voice remained gentle, but steel ran beneath it. You think the world works that way? A DeSantis woman is struck in public. Videos spread across the city. Our name, your name is disrespected. And you think we can simply ignore it? I think... Rosa stopped, choosing her words carefully. I think Durante Pisani made a mistake. He apologized. He knows who I am now. He knows what he did. And that's enough for you? It has to be. Vittorio studied her with those ancient, knowing eyes. You've changed, he said finally. 6 years ago, you would have demanded his head yourself. 6 years ago, I was someone else. Were you? Vittorio leaned forward slightly. Or were you just running from who you really are? The question struck like a physical blow. Rosa had no answer. The car started moving. Rosa hadn't even noticed the driver getting in. Where are we going? She asked. To the estate, Vittorio said. Where you belong. Where you've always belonged. Nono, please. There are people who need to see you. Family. Associates. People who need to know that Rosa DeSantis has returned. His voice softened. And there's someone coming who needs to answer for what he did. Rosa's blood ran cold. Who? Durante Pisani requested a meeting. Vittorio smiled a thin, dangerous smile. I granted it. After all, a man should face his mistakes. The DeSantis estate sprawled across 10 acres of Westchester countryside, like a kingdom carved from old money and older secrets. Rosa hadn't seen it in 6 years. As the Mercedes rolled through iron gates, ornate, imposing, topped with the family crest, memories crashed over her like waves. Sunday dinners with 30 relatives. Security walking the perimeter. The weight of tradition in every marble column, every oil painting, every whispered conversation in Italian. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress, a museum, a throne room. The car stopped at the main entrance. Rosa didn't move. I can't do this, she whispered. Vittorio's hand covered hers, warm, papery with age, surprisingly gentle. You already have. The moment you spoke your name, you came home. This is just formality. Durante's coming here? In 2 hours. Vittorio checked his watch, a vintage Patek Philippe that probably cost more than Rosa's entire year of rent. Plenty of time to prepare you. Prepare me for what? Her grandfather's smile was enigmatic. To remember who you are. Inside, the estate was exactly as she remembered. Vaulted ceilings, chandeliers that rivaled La Castiglia's, floors so polished they reflected like mirrors. Staff moved silently through hallways, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Vittorio led her to his study, a room Rosa had only entered a handful of times as a child. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that looked like it had witnessed centuries of decisions. Sit, he instructed. Rosa sat in a leather chair that smelled of cigars and old power. Vittorio settled behind his desk, studying her with those penetrating eyes. Tell me about Durante Pisani. What do you want to know? Everything. How he touched you. What he said. How he looked when you revealed your name. Vittorio leaned back. I've seen the videos, but videos don't show everything. Rosa recounted the evening, the missing money clip, the accusation, the slap that echoed through the restaurant. She didn't spare details, didn't soften Durante's actions or her own fear. When she finished, Vittorio was silent for a long moment. He apologized, he said finally. Not a question. Yes. And you believe it was genuine? Rosa hesitated. I think. He was genuinely surprised by who I am. Whether he regrets the violence or just regrets hitting the wrong person, I don't know. There's wisdom in that uncertainty. Vittorio stood, walking to the window overlooking manicured gardens. The Pisani family is powerful but young. Durante's grandfather started with nothing, built an empire through brutality and cunning. 3 generations of power. Impressive, but not seasoned. And we're seasoned? Rosa couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. We're old, Rosa. Old enough to know that power maintained through fear alone eventually collapses. Old enough to understand that true strength lies in restraint. He turned to face her. Durante Pisani doesn't understand this yet. Perhaps he never will. So what happens now? Now he comes here, to this house, to face me. Vittorio's voice was calm, almost casual. And to face you. Rosa's heart hammered. I don't want to see him. Yes, you do. The certainty in his voice made her look up sharply. You're angry, Vittorio continued. Hurt. Violated. But you're also curious. You want to see how he behaves when he's not on his own territory. When he's not surrounded by his soldiers. When he's vulnerable." He smiled slightly. "That curiosity is very DeSantis of you." Before Rosa could respond, the door opened. A woman entered 50s, elegant, with Rosa's dark eyes and sharp cheekbones. "Aunt Gabriella," Rosa breathed. "Rosa." Gabriella crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into a fierce embrace. 6 years. 6 years and not a word. Do you know how many times I wanted to find you? Drag you home? "I'm sorry," Rosa whispered into her aunt's shoulder. "Don't be sorry. Be home." Gabriella pulled back, examining Rosa's face. Her expression darkened when she saw the bruise. "He did this." "Yes." "Good. I wanted to be sure before I decided how much to hate him." Gabriella's smile was predatory. "Your grandfather's being diplomatic. I'm not. If you want Durante Pisani to suffer, say the word." "I don't." "Think about it," Gabriella interrupted. "You have 2 hours." They dressed her like a queen preparing for battle. Gabriella brought clothes from Rosa's old room, apparently untouched in 6 years, preserved like a shrine. A black dress, elegant but severe. Heels that added 3 inches to her height. Jewelry understated gold that whispered wealth rather than screaming it. Rosa stared at herself in the mirror. The shy waitress was gone. In her place stood someone she barely recognized, someone who looked like she belonged in oil paintings and history books. "You look like your grandmother," Gabriella said softly. She had that same fire in her eyes. "I don't feel like fire," Rosa admitted. "I feel like I'm drowning." "Then drown elegantly, darling. It's what we do best." At precisely 2 p.m., the gates opened again. Rosa watched from a second-floor window as another black car rolled up the driveway. Her breath caught when Durante stepped out. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, impeccably tailored. His hair was perfect again, slicked back with that same precision. But something about him looked different. Smaller, somehow, despite his height, like the estate itself was swallowing him. 3 men followed him out. Not 6. 3. A concession. A show of respect. Or fear. Franco, the silver-haired associate, walked beside Durante, speaking quietly. Durante nodded, jaw tight, shoulders tense. This was not a man on his own territory. This was a man walking into the lion's den, knowing the lions were hungry. Rosa's hands gripped the windowsill. "Ready." Gabriella appeared beside her. "No." "Perfect. Neither is he." Gabriella linked arms with her. "Come. Let's remind Durante Pisani what happens when you strike a DeSantis." They descended the grand staircase together. Below, in the main hall, Vittorio waited. Behind him stood 4 men, family soldiers, though they looked more like bankers than thugs. Quiet power. Old power. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. The front door opened. Durante Pisani walked in. His eyes swept the hall, cataloging exits, counting soldiers, assessing threats before landing on the staircase. On Rosa, she watched his expression change, saw recognition flash across his face, followed by something that looked almost like awe. This wasn't the waitress he'd slapped. This was Rosa DeSantis in her natural element, surrounded by her family, armored in legacy and silk. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Vittorio stepped forward, his cane tapping against marble. "Mr. Pisani," he said, voice carrying through the cavernous space. "Welcome to my home. I believe you've met my granddaughter." Durante's eyes never left Rosa's. "I have." "Good." Vittorio's smile was thin, dangerous. "Then you understand why you're here." Durante finally tore his gaze away from Rosa, facing Vittorio directly. "I understand, sir." "Then let's talk," Vittorio said. "About respect. About consequences. About what happens when young men forget that some names carry more weight than fear." He gestured toward his study. Durante followed, Franco at his side. But before disappearing through the door, Durante looked back one last time. At Rosa, standing on the staircase like a portrait come to life. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, not forgiveness, not friendship, but recognition. 2 people from 2 worlds, colliding in ways neither had expected. The study door closed, and Rosa realized she was holding her breath. Rosa wasn't supposed to be in the room. "This is men's business," Gabriella had said, steering her toward the sitting room where coffee and small talk waited. But Rosa was done being steered, done being protected, done being anyone other than exactly who she was. So when Vittorio's assistant opened the study door to bring in refreshments, Rosa walked in behind him. The conversation stopped immediately. Vittorio raised an eyebrow. Durante half rose from his chair. Franco looked like he wanted to object, but wisely stayed silent. Rosa, Vittorio said carefully, this discussion is about me, Rosa interrupted. My face, my name, my humiliation. I think I deserve to be here. Silence stretched like pulled thread. Then Vittorio smiled, genuinely pleased. Sit, granddaughter. Rosa took the empty chair beside her grandfather, directly across from Durante, close enough to see the tension in his jaw, the careful control in his posture, the way his hands rested on his knees like he was physically restraining himself from. What? Fighting? Fleeing? Reaching for her? We were discussing reparations, Vittorio said smoothly. What Mr. Pisani owes our family for his indiscretion. I've offered monetary compensation, Durante said, voice tight. Generous compensation. Money? Rosa's laugh was sharp. You think money fixes this? I think, Durante's eyes locked on hers. I think I don't know what fixes this. I've apologized. I've come here, to your family's home, and subjected myself to judgment. What more do you want? I want you to understand what you took from me. The words came out raw, unplanned. Rosa felt Vittorio's surprised glance but didn't look away from Durante. I had a life, she continued, voice shaking. Small, quiet, mine. I served tables, read books, fell asleep watching television. Normal, boring, free. And you took that. With one slap, you destroyed 6 years of peace. I didn't know. Because you didn't ask. Rosa leaned forward, eyes blazing. You didn't see me as human enough to deserve questions. Just guilty until proven innocent. Just another body in your way. Durante flinched. Actually flinched. Like her words hit harder than any physical blow could. You're right, he said quietly. The admission sucked air from the room. I didn't see you as human, Durante continued, meeting her fury with unexpected honesty. I saw you as a problem, a theft, an inconvenience in my evening, and I reacted the way I've been trained to react, with violence, with power, with the certainty that I could do whatever I wanted without consequences. He paused, jaw working. I was wrong, about all of it. Vittorio watched this exchange like a chess master observing a game. Franco sat frozen, probably terrified his boss would say something that got them all killed. Being wrong isn't enough, Rosa said. I know. Durante's voice was rough. But it's all I have. I can't undo the slap, can't erase the videos, can't give you back your anonymity. So I'm here, offering myself up for whatever punishment your family deems appropriate. Punishment, Vittorio mused. Interesting word. He turned to Rosa. What do you think, granddaughter? What punishment fits this crime? Rosa stared at Durante, this man who'd hurt her, exposed her, dragged her back into a world she'd fled. She should want revenge, should want him bleeding, broken, destroyed. But looking at him now, stripped of his territory and his certainty, sitting in her grandfather's study like a condemned man awaiting sentence, she didn't see a monster. She saw someone dangerous, yes, damaged, certainly, but also real. More real than he'd been in the restaurant, when he'd been performing power for an audience. I don't want punishment, Rosa said slowly. I want understanding. Durante frowned. I don't. You operate in a world of fear and violence, Rosa interrupted, where power comes from how much damage you can inflict. But that's not real power, Durante. It's just fear with better marketing. She stood, walking to the window overlooking the gardens. My family's power is old. We don't threaten. Don't need to. People respect us because they understand that some things are bigger than fear. Legacy, honor, history. She turned back to face him. You need to learn that. Not because my grandfather will kill you if you don't, though he might, but because you'll never truly be powerful until you understand the difference. Durante stood too, slowly, like he was afraid sudden movement might break something fragile. Teach me. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning Rosa wasn't sure either of them fully understood. What? She breathed. You're right. I don't understand your kind of power. I only know violence and fear. He took a step closer, not threatening, almost vulnerable. So teach me. Show me what real power looks like. Vittorio's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval, or amusement, or both. An interesting proposition, he said. My granddaughter as your... What? Teacher? Guide? Whatever she's willing to be, Durante said, still looking at Rosa. Rosa's heart hammered. This was insane. Dangerous. Everything she'd spent 6 years avoiding. But also, 2 months, she heard herself say. You want to understand? Then you spend 2 months learning our way, our rules, our definition of power. And you'll teach me? Durante asked. I'll show you why you should have known better than to hit me in the first place. A smile ghosted across Durante's lips, not arrogant, but genuinely intrigued. Deal? With conditions, Vittorio interjected smoothly. You don't touch her, don't threaten her, don't treat her with anything less than the respect you'd show me. Agreed, Durante said immediately. And if you prove incapable of learning your business in our territories ends, permanently. That made Durante pause. Rosa could see him calculating, weighing the cost. His operations in DeSantis-influenced areas represented millions. Losing them would cripple his empire. Agreed, he said finally. Vittorio stood, extending his hand. Durante shook it, a pact sealed in the old way, with witnesses and weight. Then Vittorio turned to Rosa. I hope you know what you're doing, granddaughter. I don't, Rosa admitted. But neither does he, so we're even. Franco cleared his throat. Boss, perhaps we should go, Durante said, not looking away from Rosa. Wait outside. I'll be there shortly. Franco hesitated, then bowed slightly to Vittorio and left, closing the door behind him. 3 people remained in the study. Vittorio smiled. I'll give you 5 minutes. But Rosa? The door stays open. He left too, cane tapping against marble, leaving Rosa and Durante alone under oil paintings of DeSantis ancestors who'd probably never imagined a scene quite like this. You didn't have to do that, Durante said quietly. Offer to teach me. Your grandfather would have handled this. He would have destroyed you, Rosa corrected. Slowly, quietly, but completely. This way, maybe something useful comes from what happened. Or maybe you just want to torture me personally, Durante suggested. His tone was light, but his eyes were serious. Rosa laughed, surprising herself. Maybe. Durante stepped closer, not invading her space, but closing the distance enough that she could see the golden flecks in his dark eyes, could smell that same cologne from the restaurant, leather and smoke and expensive choices. I meant what I said, he told her. The apology. All of it. I know. Do you? He searched her face. Because I need you to know that when I saw you on that staircase, I saw someone I'd gravely underestimated, and I don't make that mistake often. Is that respect or attraction? Rosa asked before she could stop herself. Durante's smile was slow, dangerous. Can't it be both? Rosa's breath caught. This was complicated, dangerous, everything she shouldn't want. But she didn't step back. 2 months, she said softly. Then we'll see what you've learned, and what I've survived. 3 weeks later, Rosa walked into La Castiglia for the first time since the slap heard around New York. The restaurant had changed. Or maybe she had. Antonio, the manager, saw her first. His face went white, then red, then white again. He rushed over, words tumbling out. Miss DeSantis, Rosa, we had no idea. It's fine, Antonio. Rosa's voice was calm, assured, the voice of someone who'd spent 3 weeks relearning how to carry power. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here for dinner. Of course. Your best table, immediately. My old station, actually. Rosa smiled at his confusion. I'd like to see Sophia. She covered my shifts, didn't she? Antonio nodded, still bewildered, and led her to the back. The kitchen staff froze when she entered. Sophia, young, nervous, holding a tray of appetizers, nearly dropped everything. Miss, I'm sorry about. Rosa pulled her into a hug. Thank you for covering, and for not gossiping about me after everything. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Everyone's been talking. The videos, the family. I didn't know what to say. Say nothing, Rosa advised gently. Let them talk. Truth will survive gossip. She turned to find the entire kitchen watching. Chefs, servers, dishwashers, all frozen in various states of shock. I know I lied about who I was, Rosa said, addressing them all. And I'm sorry for that. But everything else, the work I did, the friendships we built, that was real. I hope you can remember that. Slowly, one of the older chefs nodded, then another server. Then Sophia was hugging her again, and suddenly the kitchen felt warm instead of terrifying. When Rosa emerged into the dining room, she wasn't surprised to see Durante sitting at his usual table. Their eyes met across the restaurant. He stood, a gesture of respect he'd learned over 3 intense weeks. 3 weeks of meetings at the DeSantis estate, of history lessons and philosophy debates, of Durante learning that power without honor was just tyranny with better clothes. He'd been surprisingly teachable. Rosa approached his table, aware that every eye in the restaurant was tracking her movement. The whispers would start soon. The speculation. The newest chapter in a story that had captivated the city. Let them whisper. "Mr. Pisani," she said formally. "Miss DeSantis." His eyes searched hers. "You came back. I told you I would." She gestured to the chair across from him. "May I?" "Please." She sat, across from the man who'd slapped her, under the same chandeliers that had witnessed her humiliation and awakening, in the restaurant where Rosa Edward had died and Rosa DeSantis had been reborn. "You've learned a lot," she said quietly. "You're a demanding teacher." Durante's smile was different now, less arrogant, more genuine. "But I'm grateful for it. Are you? Grateful that I'm making you question everything you thought you knew about power?" "Yes," no hesitation. "Because you were right. Fear isn't power. It's just fear. And it's exhausting maintaining it." Rosa studied him. 3 weeks hadn't transformed him completely. He was still Durante Pisani, still dangerous, still someone who'd built an empire on violence. But something had shifted. Some understanding had taken root. "My grandfather's impressed," she admitted. "He didn't think you'd last 2 weeks. I'm full of surprises." Durante leaned back, the chandelier light catching his features. "What about you? Are you impressed?" Rosa considered. "I'm optimistic." "Which is more than I expected to feel." A server approached, not Sophia, someone new who didn't know the history. "Good evening. May I start you with drinks?" "Wine," Durante said. "Your recommendation?" The server rattled off options. Durante ordered something expensive. When the server left, he turned back to Rosa. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the difference between respect and fear. And I want to try something. A test, maybe, of what I've learned." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I want to publicly acknowledge what happened. Not hide from it, not spin it. Just own it." Rosa's eyebrows rose. "That's dangerous. People will see it as weakness. Or they'll see it as growth." Durante's eyes were steady. "You taught me that real power doesn't fear honesty. So I want to be honest. About what I did. About what I learned. About how you changed my understanding of everything." "Durante, I'm not asking permission," he interrupted gently. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Because you deserve to know. And because—" He hesitated. "Because I think you might be proud of it." Rosa's chest tightened. This man, this dangerous, complicated man who'd hurt her and then opened himself to being hurt in return, was still surprising her. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow. Press conference. I'll answer questions about that night. About the DeSantis family. About what power really means. They'll crucify you. Maybe." Durante smiled. "Or maybe they'll see that even monsters can learn. If they have the right teacher." The wine arrived. Durante poured for both of them another lesson learned, treating her as an equal rather than being served first. They raised glasses. "To lessons," Durant said. "To survival," Rosa countered. "To whatever comes next." They drank. The wine was excellent, rich, complex, with notes of cherry and something darker. Around them, the restaurant continued its elegant dance. Diners came and went. Chandeliers glittered. Life moved forward. But at their table, under golden light, something had shifted permanently. Not forgiveness that would take longer, if it came at all. Not romance, though the tension between them was undeniable. Something more complicated, more real. Respect. Understanding. The recognition that power came in many forms, and the strongest form was the kind that could admit mistakes and grow from them. Durante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at Rosa. "I should go. Early morning tomorrow. Good luck with the press conference." He stood, then hesitated. "Rosa? Thank you. For not destroying me when you could have. For teaching me when you had every right to walk away. You're welcome." She met his eyes. "Don't make me regret it." "I won't." He bowed slightly, a gesture he'd learned from her grandfather, and left. Rosa sat alone at the table, finishing her wine slowly. She felt eyes on her from around the restaurant, heard the whispers starting. The speculation about why Rosa DeSantis was having dinner with Durante Pisani. Let them wonder. She knew the truth. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not hiding, not running, but standing in the full light of who she was. Bruised but unbroken. Changed but not defeated. A DeSantis who'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was refuse to let violence define you. Sophia appeared with a dessert menu. On the house, Rosa. Whatever you want. Rosa smiled. Tiramisu. And Sophia? I'm coming back to work next week. Sophia's eyes widened. Really? But you don't have to. I want to. Rosa's voice was firm. I'm Rosa DeSantis. But I'm also Rosa, who serves excellent wine and remembers regulars' orders. Both can be true. Because that was the final lesson. The one she'd taught Durante, but had to remember herself. Power wasn't about choosing one identity over another. It was about owning all of who you were, every part, every contradiction, every complicated truth, and refusing to apologize for it. The chandeliers of La Castiglia glimmered like constellations trapped in gold, and beneath them, Rosa DeSantis sat and ate tiramisu and planned her future. A future where she was finally, completely, powerfully herself. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.